Waitress saw little boy writing help with his own blood, what 180 Hell's Angels did next. The diner was quiet that evening, the kind of quiet that felt almost peaceful, except for the soft clatter of dishes and the occasional hum of the refrigerator. Emma, the waitress, wiped down the counter and glanced out the window at the fading sunlight. She had been working at this small-town diner for nearly 5 years, and she knew almost every regular by name. There was a comforting rhythm to her job, the orders, the smiles, the conversations. But that night, something was different, something that made her feel uneasy even before she saw him. She carried a tray of coffee mugs toward a table in the corner where a young boy sat alone. His clothes were slightly disheveled, and his sneakers were scuffed. At first, she thought he was just another kid waiting for his parents, maybe trying to look busy while they finished shopping or running errands. But as she set the tray down, she noticed something that made her stomach tighten. The boy was leaning over a napkin on the table, his small hands moving quickly, almost frantically. His brow was furrowed, and his lips were pressed tightly together. Emma didn't want to startle him, so she asked gently, "Hi there, are you waiting for someone?" The boy didn't look up. Instead, he continued to scribble on the napkin, his movements shaky. Emma's eyes fell on what he was writing, and she froze. The letters on the napkin were smudged but unmistakable. HELP, her heart skipped a beat. Something was terribly wrong. Emma moved a little closer, crouching beside him to see better. The boy's hands were red, and she realized with a jolt that it wasn't ink he was using. It was blood. Not much, just enough to make the letters visible, but enough to send a wave of fear and concern rushing through her. She gently reached out, placing a hand near his arm, careful not to touch him abruptly. "Are you okay? Did you hurt yourself?" The boy flinched at her voice and pulled his hands back. His eyes were wide and filled with fear. I need help," he whispered, barely audible. Emma nodded slowly, trying to stay calm. Panic wouldn't help either of them. "I know," she said softly. "I'm going to help you. Can you tell me what's going on?" He hesitated, glancing around the empty diner as if afraid someone might overhear him. Then in a barely audible voice, he muttered, They said I couldn't tell anyone." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. "Who said that?" she asked gently. The boy swallowed hard, his small chest rising and falling quickly. "Some men, they come to my house." He stopped, his lips trembling. Emma could see the fear in his eyes, the kind of fear that went deeper than just a bad day at school or an argument with a friend. She took a deep breath. She needed to think clearly. She couldn't panic, but she also couldn't waste a single moment. "Okay," she said, her voice firm but kind. "You're safe here, at least for now. I won't let anyone hurt you." The boy's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of hope appearing amidst the fear. He nodded barely. I don't want them to find me." Emma smiled reassuringly, trying to hide her own trembling hands. "I understand," she said. "Let's make sure they don't. Can you tell me your name?" "Tommy," he whispered. "Tommy," Emma repeated, letting the name sound safe and steady in the air. "Tommy, I'm going to help you, okay? But first we need to clean your hands and your napkin. We can't have you bleeding in here. Then we can figure out what to do next." Tommy nodded slowly, still hesitant, but there was a small sense of trust beginning to form. Emma grabbed a few napkins and gently helped him wipe his hands, careful not to make him uncomfortable. He flinched a little, but he didn't pull away this time. As she worked, Emma's mind raced. She had to think of what to do next. Calling the police seemed like the obvious choice, but she didn't want Tommy to panic or feel betrayed. She needed to make sure he felt safe first. And then there was the question of who had put him in this situation. Emma had heard stories about gangs and dangerous people in other towns, but this was her quiet little community. Nothing like that ever happened here, or at least, she thought it didn't. "Tommy," she said softly, "can you tell me where your parents are?" They're not at home," he said, his voice breaking. "I was alone. I tried to call them, but they weren't there." Emma's heart sank. "You're very brave, Tommy," she said, trying to offer comfort. "You're safe here. I promise I won't let anything happen to you." She led him to a booth by the window, keeping an eye on the door and the parking lot outside. It was a small diner, and the lights inside gave it a warm glow, but Emma could feel the tension pressing down around them. She poured a glass of water for him, setting it gently on the table. Tommy took it with shaking hands, drinking slowly. Emma sat across from him, trying to appear calm and confident. "Tommy," she said, "sometimes adults do things that are very wrong. People can be mean or they can try to hurt someone, but you don't have to be afraid right now." You're safe at least until someone who can help arrives. Tommy nodded, looking down at his hands. I don't want them to come back, he whispered. I know, Emma said, and we'll make sure they don't. I have an idea, but first I need you to trust me. Can you do that? He hesitated, then nodded slowly. It wasn't a big gesture, but it was enough. Emma could see that he was exhausted, emotionally and physically. She needed to act fast. She took out her phone and called a trusted friend who worked at the local police station, explaining the situation quietly. She didn't mention Tommy's blood in detail, just enough to get them to understand the urgency. While waiting for help, Emma stayed with Tommy, talking softly about things that might distract him from fear. She asked about his favorite games, his school, and his favorite foods. Slowly, he began to relax, though the fear never fully left his eyes. Time passed slowly in the diner. Every small noise, the creak of the door, the distant sound of a car made Tommy flinch. Emma kept her hand lightly on the table near his, a silent reassurance that she was there. Finally, she saw the headlights of a police car pull up outside. Relief washed over her, but she stayed calm, not wanting to alarm Tommy. Officers entered the diner, speaking in quiet, measured tones. Emma introduced them to Tommy and explained what had happened. The boy's relief was evident, though his eyes still held a trace of fear. As the officers spoke with Tommy, Emma stepped back, feeling a mix of emotions, fear, relief, and pride. She had done what she could in the moment, staying calm and offering comfort. And while the situation was far from over, she knew she had made a difference in one small life. The evening ended with Tommy being safely taken into protective care. Emma watched from the diner window as the police car drove away, her hands still trembling slightly. She knew that life could be unpredictable and sometimes terrifying, but she also knew that compassion and courage could make a real difference. That night, Emma sat alone at the counter, sipping a cup of coffee. The diner was quiet again, but it felt different. The peace she had felt earlier was replaced with a sense of awareness. Life was fragile, and people, especially children, needed protection and care. And for the first time in a long while, she understood the weight of truly being responsible for someone's safety. The napkin with the word "help" lingered in her mind, a stark reminder of how important it was to notice the small signs of distress. She knew that sometimes, even the simplest act of noticing could save a life. And though the night outside was dark, Emma felt a small spark of hope. Somehow in that quiet little diner, she had been in the right place at the right time. After the police had taken Tommy into their care, Emma returned to the diner's counter, feeling a mixture of relief and unease. The evening outside had grown darker, and the quiet hum of the diner's lights felt almost too peaceful compared to the storm of worry that had filled her heart just minutes before. She poured herself another cup of coffee, her hands still trembling slightly from the adrenaline of the night. Even though Tommy was now safe, Emma knew that his situation was far from over. The questions swirled in her mind like a storm. How did he end up in such fear? Who was behind all of this? And most importantly, would he truly be safe moving forward? The door jingled lightly as someone entered, and Emma looked up. It was Mark, the diner's regular chef, a tall man in his 40s with a kind smile. He noticed the tension in her face immediately. "Emma," he said softly, setting a warm tray of soup on the counter. "I heard what happened. Is the boy okay?" Emma shook her head slightly, her gaze distant. "He's with the police now, but it's complicated. He's scared, Mark." "Really scared, and he's just a little boy." Mark leaned on the counter, his expression serious. "You did everything right. You stayed calm, you kept him safe, and you called for help. That's all anyone could do." Emma nodded, trying to absorb his words. They were comforting, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more she needed to understand. She wanted to know exactly what had put Tommy in such danger, and more importantly, how she could prevent something like this from happening again, not just to him, but to any child who might need help. As she sipped her coffee, her phone buzzed. It was a text message from the police officer who had taken Tommy. Emma's heart raced as she opened it. The message was brief, but it gave her a glimpse into the situation. "Tommy is safe for now. We are investigating the people he mentioned. Stay alert and thank you for your help tonight." Emma exhaled slowly, feeling both relief and a renewed sense of responsibility. She realized that this was only the beginning. She couldn't just sit back and wait. She wanted to understand more about what had happened. The next morning, the town seemed unchanged. The streets were quiet, children walked to school, and shopkeepers opened their doors with the usual greetings. But Emma knew that underneath the calm surface, a tense story was unfolding, a story that involved people she had only heard about in passing, and events that were far bigger than anything she had experienced before. While preparing the diner for the morning crowd, Emma found herself thinking about Tommy constantly. She wondered if he was sleeping, if he felt safe, if he had any hope left after everything he had been through. She decided that she needed to do more than just wait for updates from the police. She wanted to be proactive, to ensure that children like Tommy would have someone watching out for them. Around mid-morning, the diner door opened again, and this time it wasn't a customer. A group of people entered, quiet, deliberate, and commanding attention without even trying. Emma's eyes widened as she noticed their appearance. They wore leather jackets, many with patches and symbols that she recognized from news stories and community warnings. Her heart skipped a beat. Could this be trouble? One of them, a tall man with a calm expression and gray streaks in his hair, stepped forward. He introduced himself as Jason. "We heard about the boy last night," he said, his voice steady and sincere. "We want to make sure he's safe and that the people who were causing him trouble don't get a chance to hurt anyone else." Emma blinked, surprised. You know about Tommy?" Jason nodded. "We've been keeping an eye on the neighborhood. There are some people who think they can scare children into staying quiet. That's not acceptable. We want to make sure that doesn't happen again." Emma felt a mix of relief and caution. She had learned that not everyone who looked intimidating had bad intentions. Sometimes, people who appeared rough around the edges were actually the ones willing to step in when others were afraid to act. Jason continued, explaining that their group had noticed unusual activity in the area recently. They weren't police officers, but they had experience in dealing with situations where children and families were at risk. They wanted to help prevent harm in the community, especially to those who might not be able to protect themselves. Emma listened carefully, realizing that the people before her were serious about helping. They weren't there to cause trouble or to make a scene, they were there to protect. Her initial fear began to shift into cautious admiration. She asked questions, wanting to understand what they planned to do and how she could assist without putting herself or anyone else in danger. The group explained that they had observed a few suspicious individuals in town, people who had been creating fear and tension among the children and families. They had also spoken with local authorities and were coordinating efforts to ensure safety while avoiding conflict. Emma felt a sense of relief, knowing that professionals and responsible community members were working together. Over the next few days, Emma became more involved. She kept in touch with the group, sharing observations from the diner, anything unusual she noticed, conversations overheard, or new faces in the neighborhood. Her role was small, but it mattered. She felt empowered by the fact that she could make a difference, even in subtle ways. Meanwhile, the town itself began to feel safer. Parents who had been concerned about recent incidents found reassurance in seeing the group around, talking quietly with the local police, and watching over the community. Children like Tommy were given more protection and support, ensuring that they had a safe space to grow and learn without fear. Emma noticed a change in herself, too. The experience with Tommy had awakened a sense of vigilance and responsibility she hadn't realized she had. She became more attentive to the people around her, noticing signs of distress or worry and making small gestures to offer comfort and care. She understood now that heroism didn't always come in grand gestures. It often came in quiet, consistent acts of attention and kindness. One afternoon, as she was wiping down tables, Emma saw a familiar sight. Tommy, sitting with a small group of children, smiling and laughing for the first time since she had met him. The sight brought tears to her eyes. He looked lighter, freer, and more like a child who should be playing and learning, not afraid of the world around him. She approached slowly, careful not to startle him. "Hi, Tommy," she said softly. Tommy looked up and smiled, a genuine, carefree smile. "Hi, Emma." "I'm okay now," he said proudly. Emma knelt beside him, feeling her heart swell. "I'm so glad," she said. "You're safe and you're doing great." Tommy's eyes sparkled with a new sense of confidence. "I learned that it's okay to ask for help," he said. Emma smiled, realizing that this was the lesson she had hoped he would learn. Courage wasn't about facing danger alone. It was about knowing when to reach out, when to trust others, and when to believe that someone would listen and act. The days turned into weeks, and the presence of the group remained a comforting influence in the community. Emma continued her work at the diner, but she also felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that her small acts, paying attention, listening, and offering support, had real impact. And she also knew that being aware, caring, and vigilant could change lives. One evening, as the diner emptied and the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma reflected on everything that had happened. She thought about fear and courage, about danger and protection, and about the ways in which ordinary people could step up to do extraordinary things. She felt grateful for the people who had stepped in to help Tommy, and she felt a quiet pride in knowing that she had been part of his story. Even though the community had faced uncertainty, and even though danger had lurked closer than anyone expected, Emma realized that hope could thrive in unexpected places. It could appear in a cup of coffee, a kind word, a watchful eye, or a moment of bravery in the face of fear. And in that moment, she understood that her own life and the lives of those around her were intertwined with small acts of courage and care that could ripple outward in ways no one could fully measure. Emma knew that the road ahead for Tommy and the children in the community would have challenges, but she also knew that they were not alone. There were people willing to watch over them, to protect them, and to offer a sense of safety and hope when it was most needed. And sometimes, that was enough to light the way through even the darkest nights. As she closed up the diner that evening, Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. She locked the doors and took one last look outside at the quiet streets. The world wasn't perfect, and danger would always exist, but she had seen firsthand the power of compassion, vigilance, and courage. And she knew that, for Tommy and for the community, the presence of kind, watchful hearts made all the difference in the world. The weeks following Tommy's rescue passed with a strange mix of calm and tension in the town. Life at the diner had returned to its usual rhythm, but Emma felt a subtle shift in the air, a sense that things were changing, that the story she had become part of was far from over. Each morning she arrived early, preparing coffee and breakfast for the regulars, yet she remained quietly aware of the world outside the diner windows. Every passerby, every car, and even the soft rustling of leaves seemed more noticeable now. Her mind had been trained to watch for details that might indicate trouble, or more importantly, the need for help. One afternoon, a loud rumble echoed outside. Emma looked up to see a line of motorcycles parked near the diner's front. At first, her heart sank. She had learned to associate large groups of bikers with fear, mostly from stories she had heard on the news. But there was something about the way they moved, the calmness with which they dismounted, that made her pause. There was no shouting, no chaos, just purposeful, organized movement. The leader of the group, a tall man with a neatly trimmed beard and kind eyes, stepped forward. His leather jacket was decorated with patches, each telling a story of experience and membership. He introduced himself as Michael, and the others with him were members of a local organization dedicated to protecting children and vulnerable families. Emma was surprised, but relief washed over her. These were not the people she had feared. They were here to help. Michael spoke calmly and clearly, explaining their presence. "We've heard about Tommy and the recent difficulties in your community. We're here to ensure that children like him are safe and that families can feel secure in their homes. We coordinate closely with local authorities, but we also act when extra support is needed." Emma nodded, trying to take it all in. The situation was far more complex than she had realized. These men were intimidating at first glance, but their purpose was honorable. Their reputation in the town was mixed. Some people feared them because of their appearance, while others had heard stories of their dedication to community protection. Emma began to understand that courage and goodwill could come from unexpected places. Over the next few days, Michael's group worked quietly but effectively. They met with local authorities, patrolled areas known to have trouble, and offered guidance to families on how to protect their children. Their presence alone seemed to ease the tension in the neighborhood. Parents felt more secure, and children like Tommy could play outside without the constant shadow of fear looming over them. Emma found herself observing their work with fascination. There was a structure to everything they did: careful planning, clear communication, and a focus on safety above all else. She realized that their methods, though different from the police, were rooted in a deep sense of responsibility. They were there not for recognition, but for results. One morning, as Emma prepared the diner for the day, she noticed Tommy walking toward her, accompanied by a few other children. His backpack was slung over one shoulder, and he carried a small notebook in his hands. The children smiled as they approached, and Emma felt a warmth in her chest. "Hi, Emma," Tommy called, his voice bright and full of energy. "We're going to do something important today. Can we tell you about it?" Emma smiled, kneeling slightly to meet his gaze. "Of course, Tommy." "What is it?" Tommy opened his notebook, showing her a page filled with drawings and notes. "We want to make a map of our neighborhood," he explained. "We're going to mark safe places where kids can go if they need help. Michael and his friends taught us about it." Emma was impressed. "That's an excellent idea, Tommy. You're thinking ahead and helping others stay safe." The group of children had gathered around, each eager to contribute. They pointed out parks, stores, and houses where they felt secure, and noted areas that seemed less safe. Emma offered guidance and encouragement, making sure their efforts were organized and meaningful. As they worked, Michael and his team observed from a distance. They occasionally offered advice, suggesting ways to improve the map or encouraging the children to include resources like phone numbers for trusted adults and local authorities. Emma could see the pride in their eyes, not just in the children's work, but in the knowledge that their guidance was making a lasting impact. Throughout the day, the diner became a hub of activity. Parents came in to see the children's work, offering praise and support. The atmosphere was one of collaboration and hope. Emma realized that the presence of Michael's group had not only improved safety, but also fostered a sense of community. People were talking, helping each other, and paying attention in ways they hadn't before. That evening, after the children had gone home, Emma reflected on the day. She thought about how quickly fear could take hold in a community, and how courage, guidance, and attention could restore it. She felt proud of the role she had played, small as it might have seemed, in supporting these efforts. And she felt grateful that individuals like Michael and his team were willing to step into challenging situations to protect others. The next few days brought new challenges. A few children reported seeing suspicious individuals near their homes, and parents were understandably concerned. Michael's group responded quickly, coordinating with local authorities to ensure that these reports were addressed promptly. Emma noticed how careful and strategic their work was. They didn't rush, they didn't act recklessly, but they acted decisively. One afternoon, as Emma was closing up the diner, she noticed Michael standing outside, speaking with a parent. He waved, signaling that he wanted to speak with her. She approached cautiously, aware of the seriousness in his expression. "Emma," he said quietly, "we've been monitoring the neighborhood for a while, and we've identified some areas that need extra attention. We want to set up a plan to keep children safe, not just today, but in the long term. We could use your insight and assistance." Emma felt honored and a little nervous. "Of course," she replied. "I'll do whatever I can." Michael smiled, a look of genuine respect in his eyes. "Your attention to detail, your care for Tommy and the other children, it matters. You've helped us understand the community better. Together, we can make a real difference." Over the next few weeks, Emma became more involved in planning and organizing neighborhood safety measures. She worked with Michael and his team to create a network of safe spaces, trusted adults, and communication channels for children and families. The effort was thorough and methodical, and the results were noticeable. Parents felt more secure, children were happier and more confident, and the overall sense of fear in the community diminished. Emma also learned more about Michael's group. They were not simply a gang or a club. They were a community organization with a mission. They had rules, responsibilities, and a code of ethics. Their reputation as intimidating individuals was overshadowed by their dedication to protecting vulnerable people. Emma began to see the importance of looking beyond appearances, understanding intentions, and recognizing courage in many forms. One day, as she was cleaning tables, Tommy approached her with a small drawing. "Look, Emma," he said proudly. "I drew a picture of you helping me. I wanted to say thank you." Emma knelt down and took the drawing, her eyes welling with tears. The sketch was simple, but it captured her attention and care. She hugged Tommy gently, feeling a sense of fulfillment she had never expected. "You've grown so much, Tommy," she said softly. "I'm proud of you, and remember, you're never alone. There are people who care about you and will help you." Tommy smiled, his eyes shining with gratitude and confidence. "I know," he said, "and now I want to help other kids too." Emma realized that the cycle of courage and care was continuing. The children were learning to look out for each other, to notice signs of distress, and to trust adults who could help. The community was becoming stronger, safer, and more connected because of these efforts. As weeks turned into months, the town transformed. The once quiet streets now felt alive with cooperation and support. Emma continued her work at the diner, but her role extended beyond serving food. She was a witness, a guide, and a protector in her own way. She had learned that heroism wasn't always dramatic or public. It was often quiet, consistent, and compassionate. One evening, as Emma closed the diner for the night, she looked out over the streets bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. The world was still imperfect, and challenges remained, but she felt a profound sense of hope. She knew that danger and fear could appear unexpectedly, but she also knew that courage, community, and care could meet those challenges head-on. Emma understood, now more than ever, that even ordinary people could make extraordinary differences. She had seen it in herself, in Michael and his team, and in the children who were learning to stand strong and support each other. And in that moment, she felt certain that as long as people were willing to notice, listen, and act with compassion, there was always a chance to protect those who needed it most. The town had begun to feel different, though the streets looked the same as they had before. People walked with a little more confidence, children laughed a little more freely, and there was a quiet sense of reassurance in the air. Emma had noticed it every day at the diner. Parents chatting more openly, children sharing stories without fear, and neighbors stopping to help one another in ways that had rarely happened before. It was as if a sense of calm had quietly settled over the town, a calm that had been earned through effort, care, and the courage of both adults and children alike. Emma sat behind the counter one morning, sipping her coffee and listening to the chatter of her regulars. She felt a deep satisfaction in her heart. Even though the events with Tommy had been frightening and challenging, they had sparked something extraordinary, a new awareness and a willingness to act in the community. It reminded her that sometimes the smallest actions could have the biggest impact. A kind word, a moment of attention, a single act of courage could ripple outward and create change. The door chimed, and Emma looked up. She saw Tommy walking confidently into the diner with a small backpack slung over his shoulder. He was accompanied by a group of children, each smiling and carrying notebooks, drawings, and other small projects. The children had become more confident since the first days after the incident, and their energy was lively and enthusiastic. "Good morning, Emma," Tommy called cheerfully. "We have something to show you." Emma smiled warmly and motioned for them to sit. "I can't wait to see it, Tommy. What have you been working on?" Tommy opened his backpack and began showing Emma the pages of his notebook. They were filled with drawings of the town, notes about safe places, and ideas for helping children who might feel scared or unsure. "We've been making a guide for other kids," he explained, "so that if they ever feel unsafe, they know who to talk to, where to go, and how to stay protected. Michael and his friends taught us how to do it safely." Emma felt her chest swell with pride. "This is amazing, Tommy. You and your friends are showing courage, care, and responsibility. I'm so proud of you." The children looked pleased, but their eyes were also full of determination. They were taking ownership of their safety and the safety of others in the community. Emma realized that the lessons they had learned went far beyond just avoiding danger. They were learning leadership, empathy, and the power of teamwork. As the morning passed, Michael and his group arrived at the diner to check on the children's progress. Emma introduced them to the children and explained how they had helped guide the project. Michael smiled warmly at the young faces, clearly impressed by their dedication and creativity. "You've done an incredible job," Michael said. "This guide isn't just about safety, it's about caring for each other, looking out for your friends, and making your community stronger. That's something truly special." The children beamed, feeling proud of their accomplishments. Emma noticed the change in their demeanor. They were no longer the fearful, uncertain children she had first met weeks ago. They were confident, aware, and empowered. She realized that even small acts of support, listening, guiding, and encouraging, could transform fear into courage. After the meeting, Emma returned to her duties at the diner, but her mind wandered to the larger picture. She thought about how the town had come together in ways that had seemed impossible just a few weeks before. Parents had learned to communicate more openly with each other. Children had learned to trust adults they could rely on, and even strangers had begun to notice small signs of distress and step in when needed. The ripple effect of care and attention was growing stronger every day. That afternoon, Emma received a call from the local school principal, asking if she could speak to a group of teachers and staff about how they could continue to create a safe environment for children. Emma agreed immediately, realizing that her experience with Tommy and the children's guide could provide valuable insights. She spent the afternoon sharing her observations, talking about how to notice signs of fear or distress, and suggesting ways to offer support without causing panic. The staff listened intently, grateful for the practical advice and encouragement. Meanwhile, Michael and his team continued their presence in the community. They attended town meetings, organized neighborhood safety workshops, and ensured that the children had consistent support. Their reputation began to shift in the public eye, not as intimidating outsiders, but as guardians and mentors. Emma observed this transformation with interest. She realized that trust could be built over time, through consistent actions and genuine care, and that appearances could be misleading. As the days passed, Emma noticed another change in herself. She was more aware of the people around her, more sensitive to the needs of others, and more confident in taking initiative when something seemed wrong. She had learned that courage wasn't always about facing danger directly. It was about being willing to act, to notice, and to provide support when it mattered most. Her work at the diner became more than a job. It was a platform for observing, guiding, and connecting with her community in meaningful ways. One evening, as Emma closed the diner, she saw Tommy sitting on a bench outside, drawing in his notebook. She walked over to him, her footsteps soft on the pavement. "Hi, Tommy," she said gently. Tommy looked up and smiled. "Hi, Emma, I'm almost finished with my latest page. I'm drawing all the safe places in our neighborhood. It's going to help even more kids." Emma knelt beside him. "That's wonderful, Tommy. You're doing something very important. You're helping other children feel safe just like people helped you." Tommy's eyes sparkled with pride. "I know, and I want to keep helping them. I want to make sure no one ever feels as scared as I did." Emma hugged him gently, feeling tears prick her eyes. "You're brave, Tommy, and you're kind. That combination will make a difference in the world." As they stood together, Michael and a few members of his team approached. "Emma," Michael said, his voice calm and sincere, "you've done something remarkable here. You've helped create a community of awareness, courage, and care. That's the kind of impact that lasts for years." Emma felt a wave of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you all and without the children stepping up. It's amazing to see what people can do when they work together." Michael nodded. "Exactly, and remember, this isn't the end. Life will always have challenges, but as long as people notice, listen, and act with compassion, there will always be hope. You've helped plant the seeds of that hope in this town." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the streets. Emma looked out at the town she had always loved, now transformed in subtle but powerful ways. Children played freely in parks, neighbors spoke with one another, and a quiet sense of security had settled over the community. She realized that even though fear and uncertainty had once loomed, courage, attention, and compassion had created a stronger foundation for everyone. In the following weeks, Emma continued her routine at the diner, but she also became more active in the community. She organized small events to encourage children to share their concerns, taught them simple ways to stay safe, and coordinated with Michael and his team to provide consistent support. The children learned the importance of being aware, helping others, and trusting the adults who were there to guide them. Tommy's growth was remarkable. He had gone from a frightened child to a confident young leader among his peers. He continued to work on his neighborhood guide, adding new pages, updating information, and sharing it with other children. Emma watched him with pride, knowing that he was building skills and confidence that would serve him for the rest of his life. One evening, as Emma locked up the diner, she reflected on everything that had happened. The fear, the uncertainty, and the challenges had all led to something extraordinary, a stronger, safer, and more connected community. She realized that the courage of one child, the guidance of compassionate adults, and the support of dedicated community members could ripple outward to create real change. Emma took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known before. Life would always have difficulties, but she now understood the power of attention, care, and courage. Even ordinary people could make extraordinary differences when they chose to act. And sometimes, those small, consistent actions could protect lives, inspire hope, and build a future filled with confidence and safety. As she walked home that night, Emma looked at the streets bathed in the soft glow of the lamps. The town felt alive, not just with people moving through it, but with a sense of connection, trust, and hope. She knew that challenges would come again, but she also knew that the seeds of courage and compassion had been planted, and that those seeds would continue to grow, supported by a community that cared deeply for its children and for each other. And in that quiet, peaceful moment, Emma realized something important. True safety and courage didn't come from fear or intimidation, but from the willingness to notice, act, and protect. From the smallest act of attention, the quietest gesture of kindness, and the courage to step forward when someone needed help. That was the power that had changed Tommy's life, and the power that could continue to change the world, one child, one family, and one community at a time. The diner lights dimmed, the streets settled into calm, and Emma felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She knew that the story wasn't just about fear or danger. It was about hope, courage, and the extraordinary difference that ordinary people could make. And for the first time in a long while, she felt certain that the future was bright, not because challenges would disappear, but because there were people willing to face them with care, attention, and courage.